Why Genghis Khan tortured without spilling blood? When most people are asked to name the most brutal and murderous leaders in history, they will first mention the names of recent dictators like Hitler and Stalin. Going back further, many people will talk about the Norse raids, the British Empire, Attila the Hun, and so many of the most vicious Roman emperors. However, going back before any of them came to power, Genghis Khan and the Mongols permanently reshaped an enormous portion of the world and changed the culture and genetic makeup of the region forever. The Khan was a master strategist, and his brutal warriors left a path of destruction in their wake. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So make sure to subscribe to this channel for more content like this and like this video. There are many stories about the legendary brutality of Genghis Khan and his murderous exploits. Most of them tell a similar story of the Khan asking enemies to surrender, and then completely annihilating them and their families and friends if they refused. The Khan was proud of his murderous rampages and felt that the terror they inspired should be helpful in causing more enemies to join his side without him losing any men. While these campaigns of terror were business as usual for the Khan, many people didn't realize that if you made him feel personally insulted, he could be more brutal and punishing than you could imagine. As large as the former Mongol Empire was, so too is its history. Sadly, its reality has been consigned to our educational system's great man, great deeds, or should I say bad man, evil deeds section. That's it. Genghis Khan was a barbarian. Unfortunately, outside of scholarly circles, it seems like that is where he will stay. History in Mongolia has a strong focus on blood. Period. Blood is a significant issue in history. Blood has caused fear throughout human history. Whether reading about the now dubious accusations made against Erzsébet Bathory or the Nile turning crimson with blood during the biblical plagues on Egypt. Surprisingly, the same may be true of the Mongols. The pouring of blood onto the ground when murdering or being slain, according to Mongol customs, would result in the victim not existing in their interpretation of an afterlife. No one who passed away would be permitted to inherit their lineage. They would essentially disappear. It was thought that if royal blood was shed, catastrophic natural calamities would follow. This ideology led the Mongols to execute monarchs who opposed them or even the rare person who was perceived as harmful to the royal line, as they extended their domain in ingenious and terrible ways. Genghis Khan's grandson Hulagu adopted one of the Mongols' methods when he rolled the Caliph Al-Mutasim in a carpet and had his warriors stomp him to death with horses while storming Baghdad. Now there are conflicting narratives among modest historians of the era. Instead of being killed by horses, historian Atta Malik Juvaini believes he was rolled and beaten to death with fists. Hulagu managed to control the Ilkhanate, or the Mongol Middle East, with some success until his death in 1283. Therefore, blood must not have been shed. A significantly more brutal method of defeating an opponent was used by the Mongols. Ogide Khan, who succeeded Genghis Khan, left behind a widow named Torigini Khatun. After her husband's passing, she ascended to power and gave her slave, a lady by the name of Fatima, a seat in the Mongol administration. Much to the chagrin of her sons, who believed they should have been placed above a slave lady, Torigin would reign with her confidant by her side. Eventually, her own son Goyuk would take her position of authority. Some people believe he killed her since Abu Umar-e-Usman stated that the Tabakat in Nasiri, that the Khatun was sent to join Ogodi. Fatima's struggle was more severe and public. The Mongols were shamanistic. so this was not the same kind of witch trial as those found in Europe. Fatima had endured days of questioning, beatings, and burnings to demonstrate that she had bewitched Toragini. Her orifices were then sewn up and then rubbed in felt to ensure no blood touched the ground before she was thrown alive into a river. The intention was to keep her biological fluids inside of her body to prevent river pollution. The Mongols may have been known for killing scores of people without even trying, and for their brilliant combat tactics. But they also had certain honor rules even in times of war and murder. One of these ancient rules was that they could not spill noble blood. They took this very seriously, and if someone they had captured was of noble birth, they would not stab them, slash them, or kill them in any other normal wartime manner. However, this by no means meant that the noble was spared an awful and gruesome death. In fact, it would almost seem as if the Mongols followed the letter of the rule, but were showing their open contempt for it by trying to creatively punish their enemies as much as possible. Killings of fellow Mongols also kept to highly strict and painless procedures. For a Mongol to kill another Mongol, the crime had to be serious that they didn't want the victim to live through death. The staged wrestling bout was one of the most well-liked executions that took place without any blood. This would give the offender a metaphorical aspect of self-defense, or perhaps some kind of divine intervention to choose one's fate, but the outcome was always predetermined. The victim would then be carried into the air and smashed down, generally on the executor's knee or a nearby rock, breaking their back. The body would subsequently frequently be left where it fell as a type of open-air burial, essentially returning to the ground. In the whole history of the Mongol Empire, these are just a few instances of creative bloodless killings. Finding more is not difficult. These tales frequently serve as enduring connections to Mongolian history. Let's attempt to maintain some perspective by remembering that the 1200s weren't any better in Europe. While reading about Genghis Khan can satisfy your cravings for glory and gore, you can also discover more about his religious tolerance, his practice of adopting orphans from cities he had taken over and raising them as Mongols, usually with the help of his wife Bote at a time when doing so was unheard of. Many people like to point out that Genghis Khan actively talked to and sought advice from holy men of all different religions, including Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and Taoism. Some people like to claim this as evidence of him being more of a humanitarian. However, in this case, people are forgetting that the man was a brutal and merciless tyrant. While he may have been smart enough to learn about his enemies and all of their ways, he never showed any evidence in his life or rule of having the slightest bit of religious tolerance whatsoever. In fact, he had a special contempt for Jewish and Muslim people, who he openly referred to as slaves and humiliated by not allowing them to follow their own customs. He proclaimed that the Mongolians had conquered them, but they refused to eat Mongolian food. To the Khan, this was a complete affront to him. He had conquered them and allowed them to live within his kingdom, but they would only prepare food and eat it their way. He forbade them to eat any food that was not prepared by Mongolians, disallowing them from their customs. If they were caught, they would be guilty of a serious crime. Jewish people were also forbidden from following their practice of circumcision.